From NJ.com and the Heldridge Hotel, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights. With your host, Steve Politi, and Rutgers insider Brian Fonseca. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant, brought to you by the Heldridge. We've got a quarterback. Early breaking news. Pete Thamel's Twitter feed. Glad that kid finally got a scoop. Saw his most recent Rutgers game, his junior year at Syracuse, but good to give him that story. Dylan Lonergan, our new quarterback. Not surprised. I'm not surprised. Let's start there. You surprised?
No, with the benefit of hindsight, no. It makes sense that you bring in a former four-star quarterback, and we can dive into the details about how he did at BC or whatever, but ultimately, this was a kid handpicked by Nick Saban. He's been in college for 3 years. He's played in games, and you kind of know what to expect when you throw him in a game. AJ Surace, all intents and purposes, you don't know what will happen when the lights are on, and this is a very important year for Rutgers football, so I would understand wanting to put the ball in the hands of a guy that is a more known commodity, assuming that they have been, and I have no reason not to believe this, given that I have seen some of practice, that the quarterback battle was as close as they have indicated this entire time, and I guess I had gone under the assumption the tie goes to the incumbent, being the kid that's been in the program for 3 years and has learned the system. I guess the tie goes to the kid they think is the better quarterback, which is probably the right decision to make.
Yeah, I don't know that it was a tie. That's my sense. And I've heard from people who saw practice and thought that Dylan had looked better, a little bit better, even a little bit better is not a tie. It's funny. And I know this is talk about small sample size theater here, but the Big Ten Network clips, they sent a couple clips of them throwing, and I'm like, one guy looks better mechanically. One guy looked better footwork wise, and it was Dylan Lonergan. I'm not surprised at all. I think given all the stakes here, given the way college football is going, a lot of transfer portal quarterbacks out there. I will say this, Brian, and I get it. This is where you get players now. There's nothing wrong with getting a Dylan Lonergan, getting a transfer portal quarterback. It is fascinating to me, though, that we are, 7 years into Greg Shannon 2.0, he hasn't developed a quarterback. He's 18 years into his program. He's got two and a half quarterbacks he's developed. It is just an interesting thing that it's just been a failure of his tenure overall. And I think he would admit it, maybe not admit it, but he should admit it. He's not been able to fill that position with homegrown players. Again, Ethan Kaliakmanis is in the NFL. He's a Rutgers player. It doesn't matter where you get them. I understand that, but it's just interesting to me that this is another example of having to go outside of the program, outside of the kids you recruit to get a quarterback.
Certainly, and I think when we were debating the merits of each candidate throughout the offseason, and given that we really didn't have much football to base our opinions off of, a lot of it was conjecture. I think that if it was a tie, you look at what this could do for the program if you develop an in-state quarterback, right, and how that could impact you on the recruiting trail. But I did bring that up to someone within the program who would have an understanding of the thoughts of the more important people in the program, and that notion was quickly debuffed that it matters in modern day college football that you can show that you develop a quarterback. The stat was something like 6 of the last 8 Heisman winners were transfer quarterbacks. Basically more than half of the starters in the FBS, now including Rutgers, are transfer quarterbacks. That's just the way of the world in modern college football. So in a way, I guess that one major, and I agree with your sentiment that it is a major blight on the Greg Schiano era of Rutgers, that they just haven't been able to get a guy in the program and develop him to become your starting quarterback at a high level. What were the names you were thinking of? I mean, Ryan Hart, probably Mike Teal.
Ryan Hart, Mike Teal, Gary Nova. That's my 2.5. If you want to, if you want to go any deeper than that, you can. I'm sure that some of the, in the Stone Ages of those first, some of them most say Mike McCann. I mean, there's guys who've come through.
McKenna was way. I think if he played under Greg, I'm not even sure he did.
He didn't play. Did he play under Greg?
I think he graduated before Greg. The other name I was thinking was Tom Savage, but I think
Tom Savage. That's who I was trying to say. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, but he left the program. I mean, you could say, right? Yeah.
They almost didn't develop him because they didn't take advantage of his full potential. Yes. Right? He left before he was a senior. But again, I guess the point is that it's not great, and I think there were a lot of people that were rooting for AJ because it'd be a really nice story of them, kid in the wings for 2 years. But he didn't win. I guess does that concern you going forward, that they weren't able to get this kid ready, up to speed, learning the offense and ready to play? Is it I don't want to say a failure because that's not fair, because I do think the kid will play the season, but is it not great scouting that you have a kid here for 2-3 years? Like, how do you view the fact that he didn't win the job?
I mean, it comes back to the scouting part of it, because when he got here, there was so much buzz. Like, oh, this kid, you should see him in practice. He's the guy. He's the guy. You just heard this all the time. Okay. And again, with the same feel with Gavin Wimsatt, another guy where, you got here and like, you knew you couldn't fix him. Like, it was just not going to happen. So I think there's some element, whether it is a combination of not being able to properly scout these young high school quarterbacks, which is hard. Let's be honest, it's hard to do. If it's not being able to get the ones you want, also hard. I mean, these are high level quarterbacks. The guys who are finished products are not coming to Rutgers. I mean, look at where the offense was for years. This is not an easy thing. You just think you'd be able to get a dime in the rough. You'd be able to find somebody. I thought this was the guy, and we should say we're not. You make that point clear. This is not the end for him in this program. Right. Like, he's going to have a shot this year. I really do believe that as well. If it's not an injury, I mean, we've seen situations in Rutgers history. I mean, Mike Teal replaced Ryan Hart halfway through the season, and Ryan Hart came back and played the bowl game. There's a whole history of two quarterback play, and one guy's in a slump, another guy comes in. But if the season does go well, it'll be Dylan Lonergan, 12 starts. I think you will see AJ Surace this year. He's still part of the program. Hopefully not a guy who's in the transfer portal at the end of the year, a guy who sticks with it. But right now, I mean, it's hard not to look at it and say, oh, man.
I do want to add the note that it was Sean Gleason that scouted and recruited Gavin Wimsatt and AJ Surace. AJ Surace, though, did stay and commit, I think, to Kirk Shiraka. So I just wanted to just get that background info in there. I think it's
only one person approves all the recruits. That's
100%. Right. 100. I'm not disputing that. Now, I think I would be surprised if at some point this season, to your point, not including injury, like that's obviously a forced change. I'm saying at some point this season, I would not be surprised. In fact, I would be surprised if this didn't happen. At some point, AJ Surace comes in for Dylan Lonergan. If the case is that this race was this close, right? I mean, there will be a point. And I think the question is the threshold. What is the threshold? Are we thinking like, let's say it's a 13-13 game in the fourth quarter of a must-win game, Maryland, Northwestern, or the season finale against Michigan State. It's the 13-13, the fourth quarter. Dylan is really, really struggling. Is that the time to pull the plug and put him in? Like, I
don't think so. No, I don't. I think it's you lose one of those games early on. You're getting it's 24-7 against Northwestern, and this is the game you've lost. And you're like, all right, you know what? It's time for a change. This offense needs a spark. We're bringing in the kid. We're going to see what we can get here. That to me, you don't bring him in a close game. I think it would have to be a situation where the offense is not living up to its expectations. Another scenario like there's that the coaches just decide in a bye week or early in the game week that we're looking at the production. We're not getting it here. Let's make the change for start of the next game. That's a situation that can happen. I mean, given what we know about the defense, right? Like the offense got to be the strength of this team. I think it would be a bad situation if that's the case, if that happens. Like this, it would be that's not desperation necessarily, but certainly a sign that things aren't where they need to be for this year.
I will say Greg Schiano was asked two different ways about potential two quarterbacks. I asked him in the first availability of training camp if, given the depth at quarterback, given the closeness of the race, he would consider playing two quarterbacks. He said he would like to play one quarterback. He said that once they make a decision, that player deserves a chance to grow in the position and to feel comfortable that he is their guy. And he said that as far as playing two quarterbacks, when they haven't in the past, it's been because they played two quarterbacks because that was what gave us the best chance to win. We've gotten into a situation where we get a quarterback, he comes in, he grows, he performs, he gets better. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to continue, right? So this is going to be the obvious comparison that everyone has made, I think, this offseason. But this, in an ideal world, is Ethan Kaliakmanis 2.0, where you get a kid highly ranked out of high school, 4.0, has some bumps in his road, in his first stop. In Dylan's case, it was his second stop at BC. And he comes into Rutgers, gets into Kirk Straka's offense, and thrives and fills out his potential. So,
and let's remember, Doug Flutie wouldn't have had a good year at Boston College last year's quarterback. Like the team was terrible. Like let's give and some people, and I did not see Boston College play last year. Some people who have said that Dylan was pretty good under bad circumstances. You're a 4-star, you go to Alabama, you just don't win the job against better quarterbacks. Stuff happens. Like I don't fault a lot of his stops on him. I think there's a lot to like about him. I really do. Like let's be clear. Like I'm guessing that, I know that Rutgers wasn't his only suitor in the transfer portal. He doesn't have to be a superstar on this offense. And we're going to talk about this next. We're going to go position by position. We're going to break this entire team down, but this will be a run first offense, right? This is a guy, he's got to not manage the game. He's got to get the ball to his, playmakers, got to get the ball to KJ Duff's hands. This is not a situation where he's got to be the superstar here.
Let me read you his stats from last season, and you tell me if you could sign for that in blood today for this season, assuming he plays every game, what you would think. Okay. So he threw for 2,025 yards in 2025. Very impressive. 12 touchdowns and 5 interceptions on 66.9% passing.
Huh. Interesting. That's a higher percentage. It must be a lot of short passes. The problem is I've seen the game by game, so I know that there are some absolute stinkers in there, like the fact he played. Did he play all 12 games?
He played in 10 games, started 9 of them.
Started 9 of the okay. Yeah, I would not sign for that, but I certainly would sign for some of that. I'd sign for the 66%. Ooh, that would be good. 12 touchdowns. You got to do better than that, I think. The yards, I don't know. What would you do?
Well, let me, to your point, get this. I wrote this story back in January. I broke this down. A majority of his production, 1,019 yards, 10 touchdowns, were in 3 games.
Oh, okay.
Fordham, Michigan State, and Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
In one 4-game stretch against Cal, Pitt, Clemson, and Notre Dame, he threw 3 picks, 0 touchdowns.
Okay. Yep.
So a bit inconsistent. His adjusted completion rate was 74.3%. So his receivers dropped a lot of passes. And again, just a little bit of context of how you were talking about, like the depth, the short passes or whatever. A majority of Lonergan's passes last season, 65.9%, were 9 yards or less. For comparison, Calic Manis's numbers last year were 50.8%. Only 10.2% of Lonergan's passes last year were 20 yards or more. And only 18.3% were between 10 and 19. And Ethan's numbers were much higher. Obviously, some of that is the offense. Some of that is the weapons you had. He didn't have KJ Duff at Boston College, right? So that does factor into it. But that gives context to the numbers that he compiled a lot of stats in 3 games, albeit 2 of them against Power 4 teams. And a lot of the numbers were short passes that his receivers did a lot of work. And unless Kirk Straka was being honest with me in the spring and said they're going to throw in a lot more screens this season, which listen, that would be
podcast favorite.
Unless that happens, and Clay Thibodeau is very dynamic running back out of the backfield, and their slot receivers, which we'll touch on later, are really dynamic, which again is possible. I would assume that they're going to need Dylan Lonergan to push the ball downfield more. But again, I think no matter who was the quarterback, about 50% of the plays on offense were going to be throw the ball downfield and pray to God KJ Duff is in the vicinity because he'll catch it.
Right. Yeah. And this has been a vertical. I mean, there's one thing they've done well. This team did have a pretty good vertical passing game last year. I think it will continue. It seems like he's got a nice arm. Lonergan, no one's ever looking at that going, oh, it's like that was always the thing with Ethan, right? Like, does he have a strong enough arm? So, I don't know. I'm optimistic about Dylan Lonergan. I do not think he's going to be a weakness on this team. That's our next segment, Brian. Good transition here. The rant's all about transitions. I thought we would go position by position, right? Break it down, and you'll tell me who's on it, who's going to play, who's going to be whatever starters, however you want to do it. And then at the end, we'll decide if it's a weakness or a strength on this team. Are you set for this? It's a good way to break it down. You ready?
Are we going to start with quarterback?
We can. I thought we just did quarterback. Okay.
Right. Well, you didn't answer the question. Is it a strength? Is it a weakness? Or is it neutral?
Should we put neutral in it? I don't want to put neutral.
Well, okay, so here's how I would explain that. I think quarterback is the perfect position for this because
it is.
You want, in an ideal world, your quarterback elevates your team. You have a quarterback that takes you to the next level, right? I think that's reserved for the top 10 quarterbacks at best in college football, right? Everyone else, well, I guess to a certain extent, Ethan certainly accentuated the offense last year. So maybe I'm being a bit
No,
unfair with the
totally.
numbers there.
It was the strength of the team last year, no question. Yep.
Quarterback was the strength of the team last year. I think in other scenarios where you don't have a quarterback that strengthens the team, you desperately don't want your quarterback, as many previous Rutgers quarterbacks have done, and hurt the team, be a weakness, be a position that actively makes you worse. And I think Rutgers is in a spot where the quarterback isn't going to hurt them. I don't think Dylan Lonergan is going to win Rutgers many games. I would be pleasantly surprised if that were the case. But I don't think he's going to lose them many games.
Yeah.
He's not going to throw 4 picks, 5 picks, meltdown, and make them lose. So I would say it's neutral. I think he's in a best case scenario, he's a game manager, as you said, gets the ball to the right people, doesn't turn it over, and helps move the ball the way Shaka wants.
Well, we'll allow a neutral, but I'm gonna make you really gonna have to fight to get neutral. But this is a neutral one. You're absolutely right. And I think they'd sign for neutral. I think it would be, I think that would be an okay scenario if he's a guy who doesn't make mistakes, who doesn't cost them games. I mean, that's what they wanted from Kyle McManus when he got here. And the reason for that is because of, let's start with wide receivers. We all know who the main guy of that position is, KJ Duff. He will lead this team in receptions, barring an absolute disaster. Give me the 3 or 4 leading receivers behind him right now, if you had to guess.
Right. So Ben Black is the name that's been in the program for a long time. He's a speedy receiver who's kind of shown signs. I think you have to hope that he has a breakout junior year here. And then there are one of them, Jordan Houston, called the 4 horsemen, the second-year players who each had a little bit of shine last year, but for one reason or another didn't play too much. I think there's 2 names from that group that really have emerged, and that's Jordan Houston and Vernon Allen. I think both of them have a real shot of making an impact this year, of being the token kid of the Dave Brock tree that maybe most people haven't heard of, but all of a sudden you're like, who the hell is this kid? 2 years ago was Ian Strong. Last year was KJ Duff. There's got to be a candidate in that group to do that this year. And then Dysir Carter, the 4-star receiver from Virginia, the first commit of the 26 class, who was committed to Rutgers for like 18 months, rebuffed a lot of other schools that wanted him. Yeah. He loves Demir Shaw, loves Greg Schiano, loves the program, loves what Dave Brock does with the receivers. And I think he certainly has a chance with an open slot after DT Sheffield graduated. I think there's a chance for him to maybe not start, but certainly play. They're going to rotate a lot of guys as they always do. I shouldn't say that. They actually don't always rotate a lot of guys, but they'll play a decent amount of guys, I think. So I think any of those 3 or 4 guys can emerge. I would say, I don't want to preempt your answer here, but I think this is a pretty easy one. I would say wide receiver is a strength of this team.
I think it would be the strength of this team. I think it's the strongest position. That's my pick. And it's not just because of KJ Duff, who's the best player. Obviously, I think there's a lot of depth there. It really is a complete 180 from where this program was when Greg Schiano got here at that position. We would talk about this on this podcast for hours. Whatever happened to all those good receivers? Finally, they've turned that around. So if you pick one of those guys, who's the number 2? Who is second in yardage at the end of this year?
My pick would be Jordan Houston.
Really interesting. Okay.
What about you? You have a guess?
I don't have a good guess for that. No, that's why I asked. And I think that's a good sign. Like, I mean, look at all those guys on paper. I've seen a bunch of them. Like, a lot of them have been in spring games or in early season games, and you're like, God, that kid's got some. He's got some ability, So, we'll see what happens. Okay. Next position, running back. Obviously, we have one. It's another, strength. I think there's no question it's a strength. Antoine Raymond, if this season goes well, he could have one of the best seasons in Rutgers running back history. I know Kyle Monungai just authored one of them. He's going to get the ball 30 times a game. Right. I mean, and I love the fact, like, people flipped out. What list was he not on? The Doak Walker list or something?
It's the Doak Walker list. Those lists are so meaningless. The watch lists are so stupid that.
But That's a good thing because Rutgers fans flipped out. Surely he saw it. If he's looking for any reason to be motivated, like, they let me off Doak Walker list. I'm furious about it. Come on. Doak Walker's people. Wake up, Doak Walker people. Coming hard at them, whoever they are, whatever JC club, whatever Elks club comes up, compiles that list. I have no idea who does it. Who does it? Furious at the Doak Walker people.
I have no idea. Does it really matter? I mean, this stuff.
Of course not. No. All right. Behind him, you've got a new player, Clay. How are we pronouncing his name?
Tivenin. I learned recently that the H is silent. The H is silent.
That's why I asked.
So if all goes well, Anton Raymond will become the fourth Rutgers player to run for 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons, joining Kyle Monangai, joining Ray Rice, and I don't have the other name in front of me. JJ Jennings, I want to say.
It got to be JJ Jennings, yeah, about to say.
So I think that's, considering, to your point, that this is going to have to be a run-first offense, considering that they have not been shy about using the running back a lot. Anton Raymond last year tied the program record for one game with the most rushing attempts. I think it was 41 or 42, something like that. So they're not afraid to just give the rock to their best player and just run. So I would imagine he will have a lot of yards, especially considering he's really going to break in tackles and all that good stuff. Clay Tivenin will have to be the Lightning, and I think he's really impressed this training camp. He got a shout out on the Big Ten Network. He's looked good from what we've seen, and Greg Schiano, to that end, said he had a good scrimmage the first week of the thing. So I think you have a really good 1-2 punch there. And then you have a ton of guys who have been in the program that are behind them. Deshaun Benjamin, Ed Guerrier, there's so many guys who have been around that I can't. Terrell Mitchell's in his second year from Somerville. There's a lot of guys there that any one of them could. I mean, I think the money is on Deshaun Benjamin because he's kind of been this guy waiting in the wings for so long. But
and he's shown flashes too. When he's had an opportunity, he's taken advantage of it. Like, it's hard to imagine he's right now third on the depth chart. But I guess that's what he was started last year too. So.
And the year before that, probably. So he's been very patient. I think that Rutgers has a good combination of both star power at the position and depth. So you started with we would agree on the two best positions on the team that they've done a really good job of finding a position coach that's really good at recruiting and developing and makes every penny that they earn worthwhile because of what they bring to this program, not only in recruiting, in developing, and in the future. You feel really good about if you could have every room in the program led by Demir Shaw or Dave Brock. I think you feel really good about the direction.
This is it. This is Rutgers at its best. This is it right here. These two positions, homegrown player, developed. I mean, they showed the before and after pictures of KJ Duff. It's hilarious. He does not look like the same human being, right? Got into the weight room. Look, he turned himself from wasn't even his position into an NFL receiver. Like, that's what he's going to be at the end of the year. You've got depth behind him. You've got a good position coach on it. Same with Anton Raymond, and they paid him to stay. Like, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, this is not a situation where, they're doing this at the end for Auburn, like they're doing it here. So this is the reason why these guys are on the billboards around the New Jersey Turnpike. Definite strength in positions and strength of concept for Rutgers at these two positions. All right, moving on. Offensive line. Greg Schiano is optimistic. Are you?
Greg Schiano said Saturday that he feels like he knows who the best five are, and I have a feeling I do as well. The Big Ten Network filming in practice, this was the five that we saw. It was Tyler Needham at left tackle, Chris Vigna at left guard, Terrence Salami, which is a former walk-on in his sixth year at center, Kobe Asamoah at right guard, and Mashoud Giwa, a second-year transfer at right tackle. The only change there, I would say, is Dante Chin. Dante Chin wasn't on any of the BTN footage. I think it's pretty clear he wasn't at practice. Assuming he's healthy for the first week, he will start at left guard because that's where he was starting at left tackle. But I think he started at left guard 2 years ago. I think it makes the most sense to fit him in there. So that would be probably the starting five if I had to put my money on it.
You surprised at Salami over Zelinkas?
I was surprised only because I thought Zelinskis was here, redshirted last year, working under his brother, would be the start. Yeah. He's a scholarship kid from another Power 4 program. I think it's a good sign for Salami that he's been able to work his way up kind of in a very different way, Holland Pierce-esque. Holland Pierce was a physical freak of nature. Obviously, Terrence Salami, all due respect, is not that. But he's been in the program. He has worked on his strength gains. And The other thing to consider is that this is Jim Turner's first year. It's a clean slate for everybody. There's no preconceived notion of this guy was here last year. He's this guy's brother. It doesn't matter to Jim Turner. And he's going to find his best five. And it seems like, again, based on what we've seen, what's out there with BTN, that's where they're going. And then Greg said they want to find a stable of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys that you can trust to go in a game. Chris Vigna seems like a guy on that list, given that he was the first man up at left guard. Nick Oliveira was the second guy at left guard. You probably pencil him in. He's been here for 3 years. There's probably other guys at the tackle spots that you're going to need depth, because history shows over the last few years, unfortunately for Rutgers, you're going to need depth at offensive line because you're going to get injuries.
Right. History also shows you only need one broken link to that chain for it to be a weakness. I don't know. I want to say this is a strength. My gut says it's probably a neutral. I promised myself I wouldn't pick neutrals, so I'm going to say this might be a weakness, and it's just because, again, I just haven't seen it yet from a Rutgers offensive line. And you think it's a strength, and you're playing Wisconsin, you're playing these big teams, Nebraska, you're playing teams with, girth up front, and all of a sudden, what looked like a strength against UMass, what looked like a strength against Boston College. Oh man, and this is what they really need this to be a strength for this team to be. To exceed expectations. This position has got, they have got to win games on the ground. They have got to keep that defense off the field. This has got to be, and I don't know if it's the most important position group, certainly haven't gotten the defense at all yet. But man, it is crucial.
I would say a weakness only because they gave up more sacks than any other Power 4 team last year. If it's not the most, it's got to be second or third. And I don't feel like they got better necessarily. So I would have to say weakness until proven otherwise. The benefit, of course, is, again, you have the wide receiver that led the country in contested catches in KJ Duff, and you had one of the best running backs as far as yards after contact, breaking tackles, who could do a lot of the work themselves. So that kind of closes the gap. But I agree with you totally that when you play these teams, Wisconsin, Nebraska, teams that you finally have to break through and beat this year to have a breakout year, you're going to need the offensive line to hold its own against the beefy boys of the Midwest.
All right. Next position, tight end. I would not have been able to tell you who it was until I saw the script of the show. That's a bad sign for me. Maybe it's just a bad sign for me, not necessarily for the program itself. But Cam Anthony practicing based on BTN as the starting tight end. Thoughts?
Yeah, this is a position that's pretty much an afterthought in this offense. They really only block and very, very, very occasionally catch passes, unless your name is Kenny Fletcher. Right. I think they like Cam Anthony and like what he can do. I'm not sure he's going to break the mold of being a block first, catch every once in a while tight end. So I think, again, I just think the position itself is a afterthought. I will say a weakness, but only because the way they use them is just so one-dimensional that again, it works out because their wide receivers are so good. You don't need a tight end to catch the ball, right? When this team stunk a decade ago, the tight end was the best player year after year because they didn't have a wide receiver who can catch the ball. I guess it's better this as the alternative, but I think Cam Anthony's clearly going to be the starter. He's the only addition they made. They bring back a lot of guys like Mike Higgins and Logan Blake. They haven't really excelled in their first 5 or 6 years here. I don't think this is going to be the year that suddenly those guys are going to be Big Ten starting caliber tight ends. It kind of is what it is at this position. It
would be great if you get 2 or 3 catches a game, a first down a game, someone you can trust, the safety valve player, and that's what you want in the position. We'll see.
Well, part of the other thing with the offensive line is if the offensive line is weak, you're going to need a 6th guy to block. So if you have a guy always there blocking as the tight end, you can't always expect, it's the risk reward kind of deal. And as we know, Greg Schiano certainly goes towards the lower end of risk.
All right, defense. We're going to switch over to the defense. Start with the defensive line. Yes, make a face. Just give me the overall thoughts. You've seen a little bit now. You've seen the new coaching. We have low expectations. The world has low expectations for this defense based on what happened last year. I mean, you're plugging in, 9 out of 11 starters are new, probably.
Probably. I guess it depends what they do at D tackle because they do have a couple of returning guys, right. But I would guess. And at linebacker, there's a couple guys who could start again, but yes, it's fair to say a vast majority of the defensive starting lineup will be new people. There's a lot of curiosity.
What kind of defense are they going to play? I know what a Greg Schiano defense looks like. I assume, it's going to look like that. But I do wonder, like, what is this new coaching staff going to bring in? There's just a lot of unknowns about this.
It's a great question that I don't have a great answer to. I think they're going to be better. Everyone keeps saying that, and that's the truth because they can't be worse. Like they literally cannot be worse. So I think Travis Johansson's been very clear on wanting fundamentals being a big thing. So they're going to try to obviously reduce missed tackles, being in the wrong spot and giving up huge plays, which was such a huge issue last year. And not beating themselves, which again was kind of the reason they went 5-7. I can't tell you much of the details. One, because I'm not a football guy that's going to be able to break that stuff down from watching, a scrimmage. But two, I think the only real major change is that they're going to have this stud position, which is a rover or whatever you want to call it, star, whatever, a kind of hybrid safety linebacker guy that can switch back and forth depending on the offensive personnel and all that stuff.
And that player is
Jesse O'Fury seems to be the far and away leader in the clubhouse there. So I guess we could start at safety. Like if we count him as a safety or linebacker, I guess we count him more as a safety.
Okay, let's start there. Yep.
And that's a position that is probably the most familiar. Kosh Sanders is going to start again. He's the only returning starter. He's a 2-year starter who had a rough first half of the year, looked a little better when Greg took over the back half of the year. Jesse O'Fury, again, is going to be that hybrid guy, most likely. I would be shocked if he isn't. And then next to them, I think Chris Joins is probably the favorite. He's in his second year, coming here from Mercer. He didn't play much last year at safety, but again, I'm going to keep referring to the BTN clips because that's the only sanctioned visual audio that we get out of his training camp practices. But he was the second guy at safety there. So I think it would make the most sense. That's probably the most, again, stable, familiar position. I know I'm using air quotes, but that's it feels appropriate. Position on the defense. I would say, I think I'm going to preface this by saying, I don't think I'm going to call any position on this defensive strength. I think it's just not fair to say that. But I don't want to say it's a weakness because I don't think it's a weakness necessarily. I know you hate me to do this, but I'm going to call it neutral.
Okay. No, it's fair. No, it's good. Please. Better than calling all 4 positions a weakness. I tend to agree. I mean, I say this and I think back to the Oregon game, and I've got flashbacks last year of safety play that was not at a Division I level, forget Big Ten level. I mean, there were some games there you're like, what's happening? How is he? Just some things that happen on a football field that just should not happen at this level. It's got to be better than that. I do think Kosh Sanders a little dinged up last year early on, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Like I think he's got potential. I'm interested to see what the whole thing is with the roving, the roving player, if that's going to help against the run. But I don't know. Like I will go with you and say neutral as well because I'm going to obviously go for weakness at a couple other positions. But at least we have some familiar faces there. We'll see. All right. Let's go to the other position in the secondary, which I think it's the weakness. Do you agree that cornerback is the weakness on the team?
Again, I don't know if there's a position that's that much worse than the other on paper. I just don't. And I don't want to put our feelings from last season on this group because it's basically an entire new group.
Yes, that's true. It's a good point. Yeah, give me we should start there. Give me the guys. Bradley Jones, CB1. I couldn't tell you after that. Who else?
So Bradley Jones is getting a lot of shine. He was covering KJ Duff a lot in the practices. That clearly makes him CB1. He has like a 10-3, 100-meter dash, I think, or he's really fast is the point. He comes from the Citadel, which you would not think of as a place of powerhouse football, obviously. So
the fact they're making him available for interviews is interesting. That's a sign they trust him.
Yes. And then I think there's a hodgepodge of guys. Zamir Dawood, a Villanova transfer, whose dad, I wrote the story in the spring, worked at Rutgers football as a chef years ago. Let me pull up the document. It's hard to keep track with all these.
Kevin Levy.
Sage Claudius, yes. Kevin Levy got a shout out from Greg saying that he decided that this year was going to be his year, and he had a huge offseason. And so he's in the mix. Sage Claudius has been in the program bouncing between cornerback and safety. It seems like he's kind of settling at cornerback at this point. So there's probably names that I forgot to mention. It is what it is, but I think Bradley Jones is the one guy I'm confident saying will start and play a lot, yes. And then it's going to be a matter of figuring out who fills in behind. But yes, I mean, look, I thought they had decent corners last year. Like Bo Masco is going to play at Texas.
Absolutely.
Like I think some of the issue was coaching. When you see that, when you see Bo Masco at Texas, when you see Jacoby Henderson playing at Virginia, he's probably going to play at Virginia. When you see stuff like that, you tend to think that maybe these guys are good athletes, good players that just weren't put in great positions. So
Rutgers has to hope that Rob Smith was just completely overmatched as a defensive coach last year. I mean, that's it. That's kind of like this defense is sort of hanging on that, and that they went into the portal and they plucked the kind of guy that Rutgers, like they found the high achieving guys at the next level, and they're good enough to play at this level. Like Bradley Jones is a perfect example. I mean, the Citadel. Who does the Citadel play? Who is he covering? Wofford? Like, who does the Citadel? Give me the Citadel schedule. Elon? Like, who do they play? Honestly, I mean, it's kind of like now you're going against Southern Cal. You're going against some big time Indiana. You're going to some big time receivers.
So I thought they played in the Sun Belt. They play in the Southern Conference, the SoCon. So I will read you.
Wofford is right. Isn't Wofford of SoCal? That was my SoCon team.
They are. They played Wofford on November 15th. So they played North Dakota State and lost 38-0. They played Samford, Gardner-Webb, Mercer, and also lost 38-0. Chattanooga, shout out JaMichael Davis, Valdosta State, Western Carolina, Furman, VMI, at Ole Miss, Wofford, and East Tennessee State.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So that's the level you're going from. You're going from that. You're CB1. Again, this is why I think this is the weakness, the biggest concern. I mean, I don't know. Like, he could be great, but right now, look at the step up in level of competition. And I think we'll know that. Like, we're going to know that in September. Obviously, I don't know if we'll know it against UMass, a different story than, maybe Boston College stinks as well, but Southern Cal's going to come here, and they always do. At the receiver, they've had some of the talent, speed, the whole thing out there. So it's going to be fascinating early on to see if they can keep up with those guys. They could not do it last year, right? Bo Masco. Yeah,
I was gonna say different situation last year because Ohio was much better than UMass, but within the first 30 minutes of that game, we knew. Or I should say, by the end of the game, we knew that the defense was and you thought maybe it was a nerves the beginning of the season. You tried to explain it, but it was very clear in hindsight that it was going to be a long year on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, linebackers. Lots of names in the mix. A lot of them will play. I think they needed depth at that position. Some of them didn't have. Not even when the linebackers were good, there was a drop off from the first team to the second team in the Rutgers program. All right, you got Moses Walker and Abram Wright. Okay, they're guys every Rutgers fan knows. Will they start, or will the new guys come in? Ty Morris, Sean Allison. Who's going to start?
So the returning starters have not solidified those two guys have not solidified themselves as starters because Greg said there's 5 guys in the mix. He said there's a lot of guys in the mix, and he named 5 guys. Those 4 guys you mentioned, and Isaiah Deloche, who's in his second year. The surprise to me is Sean Allison. He comes in from Drake. He is a veteran player. He was in the FCS a long time, I think, because of his size. I think he's listed as 6 foot. He's basically an inch or two taller than me, and I'm 5'9". And me being 5'9" is the same as him being 6 foot. So I was surprised at how much he's playing. I mean, he was made available to the media, like you said. He talked on the MSG's kickoff special, which again, this is a kid handpicked by the program to represent the defense on TV, and he's playing with the first team on BTN. So he's clearly going to have a role. And then Ty Morris, I think, was probably the favorite to start. Just the transfer from Rice, smart kid, has the size, had some decent tape out of Rice. And Isaiah Deloche, to me, was the big surprise aside from Sean Allison, who I just wasn't sure who of the young guys was going to pop up, whether it was Kamar Archie, whether it was DJ McClary, whether it was one of those highly touted recruits. And then you have Isaiah Deloche, who's in their class coming up and seemingly putting himself in the mix. So contrary to previous years, as you said, whereas they really tried to play only 2 guys, they're going to play 4 or 5 guys from what Greg said. So that, to me, is a sign of weakness just because they don't have 2 defined guys. Because I think in an ideal world, you have 2 starters that you run with. Those are the guys.
Yeah.
Right. So
you're not throwing Tyreen Powell out there on one leg because the kid behind him is not, you're not doing things like that, at least. Right. You've got some interchangeable parts. You would think defenses would stay fresh later in games.
Yeah, that's a fair counterpoint. I will stick by weakness here, just kind of just going by that instinct. Yes. But you make a fair point.
Okay. All right. Defensive line. Break it down for me.
They have two returning starters on the interior, Keyshawn Griffin and Zaire Angoy, and that's basically the extent of the returnees. They bring a lot of transfers. Malachi Davis played at Toledo. He is getting some shouts in training camp. Greg Schiano said something interesting about Rondo Porter, an App State transfer, defensive tackle. He said he's one of these kids that when the lights turn on, they hope things like he's one of these kids that maybe doesn't stand out majorly in practice, but when the this is my interpretation again of what he's. I'm trying to reach Schianology. When the lights are bright and the game is on, he elevates to another level, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So not necessarily he's not great at practice, but he's better in games. And then there's Jadan Burnett, Tulsa transfer. They're going to have to hope that one of these edge transfers stands out. For my sake, I hope that one of them gets 5 or more sacks so we can end this yearly mention of the fact JPO was the last guy to get 5 sacks. I will say, the fact last year that Eric O'Neill and Bradley Weaver, neither of them really had a big year despite being really productive at the lower level and me having some decent-sized hope that they would stand out, that gives me some pause and gives me worry. Based on that and based on just the history of Rutgers defensive lines over the last, 12 years, 10 years, it's going to be a weakness, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a great point about last year. And last year, those guys came in with better records, better performances, better tape than these guys did. So, right? I'm not disparaging.
I would agree.
Them. Yeah.
I would agree. Certainly better counting stats, no doubt about that.
Totally, yeah. Like they were really high on those guys. Neither one of them passed the look test early on. That was the thing. That was the thing that struck me the most. It wasn't just that, like you saw them right away. You're like, really? That's him. So yeah, and I come back to this, and of course, like this is the Big Ten, and it's not just like all of these toss-up games that Rutgers have, like these games that they have to win to have a great season, to exceed expectations. The Wisconsins, the Nebraskas. I'll put Michigan on that list just because. All right, yeah, you're right. But you know what I'm talking about? Teams like that they have to, they have to be able to prove they can beat teams that traditionally have been really good up front in the offensive line. And this position has been a big disappointment for the most part. And Greg Schiano and the entire Big Ten time. It's the hardest position to recruit to. Now you're paying for these players at a high level that it makes it even harder. Yeah, this is they dismissed. We haven't even talked about Whitey Collie Johnson. That's obviously getting tossed out in camp. You did something that was not good, especially at this position. So there's a lot of concern with defensive line, and clear weakness in my opinion.
Yeah, just really quick on YD. He was going to play mostly third downs, right? He would be very helpful as a 6'7", like rangy, athletic kid. Yeah. Like he could be. And this is not a direct comparison to the quality, but I'm thinking like a Kamoko Toure when he was a freshman. He was the same athletic guy, third down, get to the quarterback, like that kind of role. I think we can't get into too much detail, but basically this was there was a recurring issue. This wasn't like a one-time it wasn't like everything was rainbows and sunshines and then one incident, and then it was kind of like a recurring pattern, and then it went overboard, and that was kind of just the straw that broke the camel's back. No real way of coming back from that, and we'll see what ends up. He's kind of in a really sucky part of, and I guess this was the reality for most of college football, but like getting kicked off the team in August, you can't go into the transfer portals and you can't play for anybody. So you're basically stuck for the next 4 months training on your own, watching the college football season and hoping someone grabs you in January when the portal opens. Yeah.
Not a smart decision by him. All right. So basically across the board weaknesses, or maybe one generous neutral on defense. You didn't put the kicking game in here.
Forgot. Oversight. And it's funny because there is a kicking competition, right? Like last year, it was the setup. I don't know if it was officially recognized as this, but the Jay Patel has the short game, whereas Dane Pizarro, who has a much better leg, has the long game. Dane Pizarro can boot it, man. I mean, the ball is a rocket off his foot. It's crazy. Really? So it'll be interesting to see if they go with that same model. I just think it's really hard to not play Jay Patel when he is literally the most accurate kicker in the history of Rutgers football. So I think my gut tells me you maintain the short game with Jay Patel, the long game with Dane Pizarro. And then punter Jacob Anderson is back. He's going to be the punter. And I think Michael O'Connor is the long snapper. I could be wrong there. But I'm fairly certain he's the guy.
All right. We just broke it down, and you put this in the notes. The football Vegas line has moved to 5.5 now. Optimism out in the desert.
I hear you drove across state lines to Pennsylvania, put a giant bag on Rutgers over 4.5 wins. That's what really tilted the. I don't know how to interpret that. Listen, I'm not Vegasologist here. I'm not like intimate with the knowledge of why, like what it means, right? I guess it'd be good. I don't know if it's a coincidence that it moved the day before they announced the starting quarterback. Maybe Vegas knows something we don't.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Is it a good sign for Rutgers that they moved the line? Does that mean that they are better than expected? Does that mean that nobody was betting on Rutgers under win total and one random guy put $1,000 and they're like, oh.
I thought 4.5 was way too low. I did. I really did. I just thought, and looking at the schedule, when you've got 3 wins in the non-conference, they've got to be wins. And then so you get 1.5 out of, and there's 6 winnable games. Like there's 6 games that Rutgers can win in the Big Ten. You know, I'm not saying they will, but there are 6 games there that you would go. You don't think there's 6?
That's generous, I think.
Let's go through them. Go through them. All right. You're going to say no to
Wisconsin, Nebraska, Maryland, Northwestern, Michigan State. It's 5.
Penn State stinks. That's 6.
It's Penn State. They have better players.
They almost beat them last year. That's 6.
I guess a lot of the roster turned over. A lot of the rosters from Iowa State, which was a good program. Like that's
by the way, USC. I mean, how many games did USC lose to like middling teams? Like they're not some under Clay Helton. They have not been some juggernaut. There's no like they're not Oregon. Like there's no game. Only one game on the schedule. You're like forget it. That's Indiana. There's no like Ohio State. There's no Michigan's not Michigan. I mean, I get it. That is the second that very unlikely. They've got an enormous payroll. It's Michigan. I understand that. But still, it's not like this is not murderer's row here. This is not the years where they came into that division in the Big Ten, and you're like, all right, you're 0-4 here. Can you get 6 wins against these 8 games? That those days are over.
2 things. My thing with Michigan and USC, even if I will give credence to your point there, they're 2 of the most like talented teams. Like if you look at the recruiting rankings, they are objectively just filled with talent.
Right.
And I think to a certain extent, that's just enough, right? To win games against teams at the caliber of Rutgers, right? Like it's just, if you have enough talent, even if the coach has a horrible game calling things and tries to get cute and all, I just think you're so overwhelmed with talent that they win, right? And your second point to verify your feeling, where you say this is a little different than the past in the Big Ten, where you kind of just struck out for losses. Rutgers has, according to ESPN's SP Plus rankings, which have been historically very accurate, the second easiest schedule in the Big Ten. Now, it's still 39th nationally, but that is the second lightest schedule in the Big Ten. It's not 2024 easy, where I think basically every game was winnable.
Right.
But it's pretty close.
Yeah. So now you look at this, and you got 3 for Rutgers to have a good season. There's levels here for good, great, bad seasons. You go 3-0. That's the first thing. That's the prerequisite. Non-conference, non-negotiable. 3-0 must go 3-0. They've gone 3-0 in the non-conference every year since Greg's been back, right? Pretty much. They've got to do it again. There's no reason they won't. Those 3 teams stink. 3-0. All right. Then you look at those 5.5 games. You're going to give me, I'll say 6, just because for fun, for conversation. If you win 5 of them, again, hard to do. It's the greatest season, one of the greatest seasons in Rutgers history. You win 4 of them. It's a very good season for Rutgers, a building block season. You win 3 of them. Okay. We're back. We're crossing the Hudson River. We're like George Washington heading right to the Bronx. I don't know if he did that or not, but it sounded good. We're across the George Washington Bridge. He must have done it. It's his bridge. Going to the Bronx. If you win 2 of them, it is bad. And we're talking hot seat stuff. If you win 1 of them, everyone gets fired. There you go. That's kind of what it is. Yeah, that's the season in a nutshell. I just broke it down for you.
Perfect. What is the over-under for us to hit this button, to smash?
Of course we're going to hit that button. Why would we have the panic button? He's holding it up. If you're listening to it, it's our panic button. That I don't know where you got that. Some novelty. Where'd you get that? Spencer Gifts in like 1987. Where'd you get that?
Dave and Buster's. I earned it on whichever arcade game I dominated. and I used all my tickets to get it because I said, hey, I cover Rutgers athletics. This is going to be very useful and also more importantly, I'm a co-host of the Rutgers Rant, where all we do is hit the panic button. So I think you hit the panic button. Obviously, I mean, it's no question if it's 4 or less wins, right? That's clearly panic button because you're showing clear regression. You're going backwards, and you're going to lose a game that you probably shouldn't. 5-7, I think you're probably, if not hovering it, you're tapping it. Like whereas 4 and less, you're smashing the panic button. 5-7, you're tapping it.
You're hitting the panic button. 5-7, come on.
6-6, I think you hover it and your hand's shaking a little bit and you accidentally hit it. I think 6-6 for certain corners is the straw that breaks the camel's back and say, I can't do it again. I can't be freezing my ass off at the Pinstripe Bowl with 5,000 other of my Scarlet brothers and sisters. Take me somewhere warm, you know?
Right.
So I would say 7 regular season wins or more is the threshold for a positive season, for a step forward. To take the strength, weakness, neutral model, I think 6-6 at best is neutral. At best.
Of course, 6-6. It's the definition of neutral.
Right.
We're going to do our games. To be clear, we're going to do our game to games next episode. We're going to go game by game, Mike and the Mad Dog style. But yeah, I agree with you on that. Totally. Yes.
Just for the record, 6-6 5 years ago was basically like making the college football playoff.
Correct. Yes. And times have moved on. Yes, absolutely.
Just giving you my perspective on why I say it.
Totally. All right. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the schedule, there's winnable games. The problem is, and this is always it, like someone's sitting there in Evanston, Illinois on the Wildcats special podcast going, well, they got to beat Rutgers. Like same thing, right? The Maryland podcast, have enough Maryland media to do a Maryland, the Terp special. What's the Maryland podcast called? Turpitude live from the Washington Post. They don't have.
The Washington Post hasn't covered Maryland in probably.
They don't have a sports department. There's no Maryland podcast.
Yes, it's been a while since they covered. They used to have a beat writer, probably 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. Here's the thing, and again, we'll go by the more detail in the game by game breakdown. But in recent years, every time you get to a game where it's like 50-50, Rutgers has a shot, it would be a big win. You got whatever, or even to move the ball forward. You got Wisconsin, 42-0 demolition. You got UCLA crossing 3 time zones, playing at noon in Piscataway. Fire their coach or whatever. Their coach was embattled and an embarrassment to the program. Lose that game. Nebraska, you have like 3 chances against Nebraska in 2.0, and you lose all 3 of them. Iowa, you're in it, but your quarterback literally can't throw a ball 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. It's just every time, and it's not like you win some, you lose some. It feels like every time Rutgers has been in that position in recent years, they just haven't come close. So that's what gives me pause when we're looking at Wisconsin and Nebraska.
Of course, they've got to win those games. They've got to win some of those games, but it's just time. I mean, if it's and I guess there's degrees of it. If it's another 6-6 season where, you beat Maryland and you beat, mediocre Northwestern team. I mean, Wisconsin was 4-8 last year, right? Like Rutgers have a better record than Wisconsin. This is not. I mean, come on. Nebraska, they've been 6-6, 7-6. They're going crazy out there. You could end Matt Rule's tenure. He just signed a massive contract. You can't fire him yet, but still, you could send people go crazy in Corn Country.
That has never stopped people from making stupid decisions, firing coaches. The Corn Country is not quite oil country, but that stuff. And I just want to, for the sake of fairness, Rutgers has had a couple of nice wins. They beat Washington, which we said at that point was a nice. I'm just trying to be fair. And the other win is they beat Northwestern in 2023, which again, to repeat a point I've made a few times, and to repeat the point I'm making here, that is the only Big Ten team Rutgers has beaten in Greg Schiano 2.0 that ended the season with a winning record. One. That's it.
That's something else.
So at some point, you got to beat somebody. It doesn't even have to be a ranked team. That streak is probably going to continue, frankly, given the way the schedule breaks down, barring a shocking Nebraska ranking or whatever. That's going to end. They're not going to make the AP top 25. You got to beat somebody, right?
That's it. Beat somebody. Beat visitor. All right, let's end there. I think it's a good spot. We're going to come back early next week probably, and break down the schedule game by game. We're almost there, Brian. Football season. UMass, Thursday, September 3rd, 6 p.m. Get your good tickets available. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next year. We'll be back next week to break it all down.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant, sponsored by the Heldridge Hotel. Head to nj.com/Rutgers for more Scarlet Knight content.